Okay, hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're watching our live stream on YouTube. Ivan here from Radio Express, and we're in Athens today, and getting ready for the big opening session on RadioDays tomorrow. Today is what's known as the Free Sunday, but it's very, very busy, and I'm so pleased to welcome Paul here from Boom Radio. Before we get to our chat, which will be really intriguing for many of you watching, a few words about Boom Radio. It's a truly unique concept from the United Kingdom, and it has been booming. So, Paul, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate that, and thank you for taking the time. So, in a few words, please tell us what Boom is for those who are watching, because I'm so fascinated by the concept, but for those who've never heard of Boom, please tell us the story of Boom Radio.
Well, thank you. Great to be here. And I'm just a presenter on Boom. So I'm just a freelance presenter who does one show a week and fills in for other people. But basically, Boom is about serving those people who otherwise are disenfranchised. And in the UK, we've got some great networks. We've got the BBC and commercial networks, but they tend to serve audiences under 50, under 55. And the BBC has been, particularly with Radio 2, its national network, been moving that younger for quite a while. And so people who are born in the 50s, 60s, 70s, the baby boomers, feel it's not really relating to them anymore in terms of what it talks about, in terms of the music it talks about. And commercial radio's got Greatest Hits Radio and others, but they're really great oldie stations. Again, they're not addressing this target audience. So David Lloyd and Phil Riley were the ones who came up with this idea to create this new station to fill this gap. And it's a very simple concept. What it is, it's about broadcasters who've been around for a while, great experience, got good stories to tell, and we play music that people love, that they grew up with in their teenagers, because we're all sort of captured by the music we bought in our teenage years, or when you first met your girlfriend, or you bought your first house.
All the firsts.
All the firsts, exactly. And so Boom Radio, the core station, Boom Radio, plays principally 60s and 70s music, hosted by a lot of well-known presenters, people like David Hamilton, Roger Day, Nicky Horn, Judy Spires, names who are well-known, who have a relationship with the audience. And what's great about Boom is you're encouraged to talk. You're encouraged to tell stories, to talk about things that relate to your life. And it might be, holidays, it might be jewellery, it might be about, first kiss, it could be about a band you went to see, a teacher at school. Graham Dean does The Breakfast Show, and he does School Call. Now, none of our listeners are going to school, but they used to go to school.
True.
And they're remembering their school days. The school reunion is a fabulous thing. So it's really tailored to that audience. Since then, David and Phil have expanded and introduced Boom Light, which is basically 50s favourites. So it's the crooners and all that pre-rock and roll stuff that's brilliant, and nobody plays it. And there's Boom Rock, which is really rock music from the 70s, 80s, 90s. People like Lynyrd Skynyrd, Bob Dylan, the Eagles, Rush, bands who otherwise don't get onto mainstream radio. And the other thing about Boom is the repertoire. We play thousands and thousands of songs. We're not on a high repeat. Some songs might get played once every year, and it's full of surprises, unusual things. I get these incredible emails from a listener saying, you played a Gong track the other week, or you played a Neil Young song I've never heard before, or haven't heard for years. And they love it. And the emails are incredibly passionate. I mean, this audience really loves what we do. And what we're doing is something that I think no one else is doing.
It's focused listening, isn't it? Because they would notice the tracks you're playing, and it's going back to the roots of commercial radio, about having fun.
It is. I mean, I think the audience is really engaged with this. We interact via, obviously, social media, but also via email. And this audience will email you. I mean, I get emails from people saying, I now stop at 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon and I just listen to you for the 2 hours and I don't go shopping, I don't go out. My husband has to go and do something else. I'm focused on that. Or can you play me, a T-Rex track? And it'd be an obscure T-Rex track that possibly I've not even heard before, but they mean something to them. And I get lists of records. I mean, I get people writing with 20-odd songs. Here's the songs I'd like you to play.
Source the tunes. And
and when you play it, they go, oh my goodness. I had a couple, in fact, yesterday evening. I came off air at 6. By 6:05, I had 2 emails straight away saying, oh, thank you for playing that track. And it made my day. And it's, it is a relationship. So I think that we as the presenters on the station get as much from it as the audience do. And it really does feel like a dialogue and a community. And as you say, the radio figures have been exceptional.
700,000, I think, Q4.
Yeah, and 1 million a month now. We're up to 1 million a month. And growing every single quarter. So it shows there's a market here. And I honestly think, actually, the potential is much bigger. I think there's many, many people who don't yet know about us. One of the challenges about Boom is it's basically a group of friends who got together, hasn't got the money of a Global or a Bauer.
Yes.
So marketing is difficult. So I think there's still a lot of people who maybe don't know about us. So I think there's a lot more growth to come. But most of all, I think everyone who works there loves it. And we all work from home.
Yes.
We all work from home.
You stole my next question. But
Sorry.
No, not at all. That's the risk and I guess the beauty of speaking with radio people. Now, the concept of Boom is unique also from technical and technological perspective because you're all based in your own locations, in your own studios, coming off the back of the pandemic. And tell us more about that. Because it's a truly new age digital station, and yet, musically speaking, going back to the 50s. So tell us about the process as a presenter, how your day will progress from getting ready for the show, your prep, going on air, and then off air. Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, I started in hospital radio and then commercial radio, where you went to the studio and you were in the studio for 3 hours doing your show live. And then you handed over, someone else came and sat in the chair and they did their show live, and that was how it was done. With this, we all use RCS Zeta, and you have your computer and you have your microphone and your mixer at home, and you do your show at home, and you do it voice tracked. And most people do it on voice track just a little bit before it goes out. So, if they're on air at, say, 4 in the afternoon, they'll record it maybe at midday. So it sounds
as live.
And the thing about it is that, like any radio, you've got to do the prep. So in that sense, nothing's changed. You need to do the prep. You've got to check the emails from the audience. You've got to check the songs you're playing. You've got to think about things to say. You want to make sure you talk about topical things. You've got to think about those links. Our business is about using words. And you've got to use words in a way that's engaging, entertaining, and clever. So the prep is absolutely critical. Then when you get to come to do your voice session, it's like doing a live show, except you don't have all the records playing. You hear the beginning and the end of the records, and you do your link between the records. I always submit song choices. So Gary, who runs Boom Rock, I sent him a list of an email saying, can we put this song in, this song in, this song in? Some are my choices, some are listener choices. So they all appear in the log. So the log is all there, and you go through and you do the show as if it was live, except you then pause between each one because the record will appear live on the actual day, but not when you're recording it. But you've got to imagine, I've got to always imagine it's Saturday afternoon, 4 o'clock. What are people doing? Now, I may be recording it on Saturday morning or maybe Friday afternoon, but I've got to imagine it's Saturday afternoon.
But you know what it feels like.
You know how it feels, and you've got to get into that zeitgeist.
Yes.
And try and do it as live. If you make a mistake, you can go back and do it again, which you couldn't in a live environment. But broadly, try and do it like you would any link. And any radio link is about, you've done the prep, you're not going to be an automaton. There's going to be some pause, the occasional but that's conversation. But exactly. Make it sound natural.
Not sterile and safe.
Yeah. And I think, and enjoy it, and we do. And then the great thing is then, you sign off and, you're done. And
done.
It's done. But I do think in that sense, it's all about thinking about the audience. I love to play songs that I know about, or I've got something to say about, or I've got a story. I mean, I told a story yesterday about a track which is played by Medicine Head, which is a band you may, not people only really play one or two songs. They'll play One and One is One, and the other hit was called. It's gone from my head for a second. It's gone for a second. Anyway, they had two hits. Well, I played something else.
Yes.
Now, Medicine Head was supported by John Peel, the DJ from Radio 1. And they wanted to meet John Peel because they wanted to get his support. And they found out John Peel was playing at this club called the Lafayette Club in Wolverhampton. So they got a van, they went to the Lafayette Club in Wolverhampton and said, we're the band. But they weren't booked. We're the band. They said, come in. They said, what are you called? They said, we're called Jethro Tull. Now, Jethro Tull were actually playing. So they went in, and then they walked into the auditorium, and there's Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull saying,
you're not Jethro.
So who are you? Oh, we're Medicine Head. And Ian Anderson, they said, well, can we play? Can we support you? And Ian Anderson said, yes, you can. And so they got a gig on stage just by turning up, supported Jethro Tull, a huge band, and they met John Peel, and of course that was part of their success story. So little stories like that, and in fact, John Fiddler, who's the leader of Medicine Head, told me that when I interviewed him a few years ago. So there's a story I can share, which just makes the whole thing come alive, and it's a great story because people may have gone to the Lafayette Club in Birmingham, they'll remember it, or they may have been Medicine Head fans, or if they're a new band, they think, maybe if I'm a bit cheeky,
that's an idea. Yes.
Maybe I go and do the same with Greg James today, from Radio 1, or I go to see Ken Bruce from Bauer.
Yes. And now to RadioDays and the RadioDays topic, and the big topics this year, podcasting, programming, and everybody has been talking about artificial intelligence. Your thoughts, not only from Boom Radio perspective, your thoughts. Where are we going with this?
So the theme.
What do you reckon?
Well, it's a big question.
I know.
It's a big question.
I know.
So the topic this year is redefining radio. I think first of all, what I'd say is whatever technology throws at you, great storytelling, engaging people, great personalities, good music, those things are always going to work. How you get them to audiences will change. And it is changing, and podcasting has grown massively, and particularly amongst younger audiences. The Boom audience are a bit less likely to listen to podcasts. They do, but they tend to listen to fewer than the younger audiences do. They still very much like live radio happening as
linear,
it happens. Linear radio as it happens. But I think the lesson is that we shouldn't let technology drive it. We should drive the technology. Technology to me is an enabler. It's a way of doing things better. So in radio, for example, if AI can do some of the boring routine things, and there are boring, repetitive routine things, that's great. But you don't really want AI presenters.
No. I agree.
I don't think an AI person could tell that story about Medicine Head going to the club in Wolverhampton and talking.
They would have not had this experience.
They wouldn't have had that experience. So they'll search all the databases and they'll come up with a perfectly good story, but it might be a story you've heard elsewhere.
Yes.
And have they got the passion and the energy and the sort of the blood and sweat you get from living? By living you go through experiences, and we want those shared on the radio. So I think AI is a tool, fantastic. And in my TV work, we use AI for doing translation, for doing dubbing, post-production. When you're doing a crowd scene, you can use AI to create the crowd scene, all sorts of things like that. Really smart uses of AI. But I do not want to see, and I do not believe the audience want to see AI radio hosts or AI radio journalists. But maybe helping create stories, generate stories, logos, graphics. I mean, one of the things about radio now that's important is navigation. Radio sits on an EPG or as a thumbnail on a platform. If you use AI to generate those thumbnails, so for example, those thumbnails are tailored to you individually, if that increases your engagement, which AI can do, that's a really good use of AI, for example.
Yes.
What was that on podcasting? Podcasting is great. I do a lot of podcasts. I love podcasts. Podcasts are like a very intimate chat. It's like we are now. It's like you and me, you're having a chat. And it's a very intimate one-to-one experience. And generally tends to be a more narrow-cast specialist subject. In a way, it's a bit like the old-fashioned idea of the magazines in the magazine shop. All those specialist magazines. If you were a train spotter, there'd be 5 different magazines for you.
Yes.
Or 10 on fitness. whatever it is, a podcast is really good at getting into the detail and the depth and drilling down. So I think that's what podcasts do. What was the other point you mentioned? Sorry, there's another one. You meant about the other one is commercials, of course. The other one is commercial.
Yes.
The other one is commercial. Radio takes about 5% of display in the UK.
Yep.
Obviously, online is a big threat. People think that online is more accountable because there's more data. So radio has to get better at producing data and
analytics,
to make it more accountable. Yeah.
And that's, I guess, and also having these massive differences between continents in terms of metrics. Over in America, they use one system. Here in Europe, we use a different system.
Yeah.
Other territories, they don't have a reliable system at all.
Yeah.
So that's I guess, one of the things that we have to find solutions for. And so we ask all of our guests 2 questions. So the first one is, what is the thing that you're the most excited about? Be it programming or something in technology, what is the thing that excites you the most when you think of radio today? Because it's got so diverse these days. Technologies, as we just covered, it's a vast field. Programming, we've tried almost everything, and probably we lost our way at one point, becoming so safe and I would say sterile. So, what is the thing that excites you the most? Seeing all these new developments, we're, I guess, bombarded with technology and with inventions and all sorts of things.
Well, I think the massive opportunity for radio is to be absolutely ubiquitous. We've moved away now from having the radio set as being the device by which you get your radio. Radio is now on all of these different connected devices. And TV is really doing that very, very well. If you look at the TV world, the streaming world, there's now a whole new bunch of gatekeepers coming along. It's no longer the BBC or ITV or Sky or Virgin Media. It's the manufacturers of equipment. So, for example, Samsung, Hisense, LG, who together represent 80% of total TVs shipped on a global basis. They are now a gatekeeper, and you can now have a TV channel and do a deal with Samsung for a TV channel. Why can't you do that for a radio channel? So I think the point is that radio needs to be on all these devices, all these ways in which we're receiving media. And I think traditionally we've thought of music and radio and TV as being different. Consumers don't think of them like that. They're sources of entertainment.
So true, yeah.
And radio still represents about 20% of all media hours. If you think all the things people do, social media, television, etc., radio is still 20%, so a big, big chunk. But I think we need to make sure that we are actually there where all these other things are too, because consumers want it all together. They want all their entertainment in one place, and they want to access it easily. And if we're not, if we're not an app on every single device, we're not an app on every single opportunity, we're going to lose out. So that's the big opportunity, and I think there's more work to do. The car thing was always a challenge, getting digital into cars.
Yes.
That's sort of been cracked now. But we've got to be absolutely
it's streaming now. Yes.
Everywhere, completely non-exclusive. We need to be just absolutely ruthless about being everywhere.
Anywhere and everywhere.
Anywhere and everywhere, yeah.
Yes, and lastly, I guess that's the 180 of this question. What frightens you the most? What, radio-wise, what gives you, sleepless early nights?
My recurring nightmare has always been turning up to the studio, doing a show, and not having any records to play. Thinking I've forgotten to bring the records.
So it's not dead air that frightens you.
No. Well, I've had situations. I worked at a station called Mercia Sound in Coventry. In fact, the power went off, and I had no music for 35 minutes.
No.
So I had to talk. This is doing the breakfast show. I had to fill for 35 minutes with no music, nothing. All that was working was the phantom pied mic. That was quite a nightmare, and it still keeps me awake. So I think even when I'm doing my boom show, I think, gosh, what happens if I look at the computer screen and there's no songs in there? What am I going to do? No, I think tech is something that's both scary but also an opportunity, and I think you need to keep across it. I'm always frightened that I'm not across what's going to happen next. And I think when you've been doing it for a long time, the risk is you think your experience is going to always serve you well. And I think the lesson is no, it may well serve you well, but keep on learning and keep being open to the idea that you don't know the answer.
Yes, true. Paul, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. It was lovely chatting to you, and have a lovely conference today and tomorrow and on Tuesday.
Time for a beer, I think. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, guys, and we'll resume our live stream later.